Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to today's Let's Talk. I would like to begin by expressing my condolences to Sister Sadia Manzoor's father, her extended family, and her friends. As a community, let's all keep her in our duas. May she attain the highest level of Jannatul Firdaus. Ameen. As we move forward from this tragedy, we need to come together as a community and truly understand what domestic violence is. What are the red flags that define it? What are the mental health repercussions of domestic violence, of trauma? What it looks like, what it entails, and what it causes. And together we must work to build healthier families. Today, I'd like to introduce our two esteemed panelists, Bibi Khan and Dr. Ketam Hamdan. Bibi Khan is the director of An-Nisa Hope Center. She has been on the domestic violence path for over 13 years, and her compassion and passion show in all the work that she does. And Dr. Hamdan is the director of mental health at An-Nisa, and she has her education and the way that she has taught us and trained us is phenomenal. So thank you, both of you, and let's begin. I'd like to start with you, Bibi. What is domestic violence in terms of what does it entail when a client comes? What does caseworking entail? What are red flags? What does red flags even mean? Can you please elaborate on this and elaborate on what exactly happens when a client comes, and what does An-Nisa provide or any other domestic violence agency? Like, what kind of services are you able to provide? What kind of services are you not able to provide?
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So obviously, this is a very difficult time for everyone in our community, especially for the friends and families of the victims, Sister Sadia, and of course, her mom and Khadija. And I wanted to make sure that we all keep this family in our duas, and inshallah, I will also. So before we start with domestic violence, you know, the word domestic violence, it's not new to the Houston community, okay? This community is one of the few communities in the United States that actually has a Muslim domestic violence organization working within them to educate, advocate, and provide support for victims of domestic violence. You would be amazed to find out that many of the big cities in the United States does not have a Muslim domestic violence organization. So domestic violence is not a secret, or it's not new to this community. Since 2009, An-Nisa has been talking about domestic violence, advocating for victims of domestic violence. We started out with 50,000 Muslims in the community in 2009. And today we have 350,000 people, Muslims, in this community. So what is going on? Why is it that we have only An-Nisa Hope Center? Let me tell you why. Not many people think that domestic violence is a big enough problem to even address or talk about. And most importantly, not many people want to risk their peace of mind to protect victims of domestic violence. And many of them also do not have the know-how of how to help victims. The DV team of An-Nisa stands in the front line 24/7 to assist these families, okay? So the victims of domestic violence have the support system. The issue here is that in the year 2009, 2010, every year we were getting a maximum of like 200 cases that came through. Last year in 2021, we had almost 800 domestic violence victims that came to An-Nisa. The problem is huge. Of course, the problem is just escalating because, again, people do not take domestic violence seriously. So a lot of us don't even know today what domestic violence is. But domestic violence it comes in so many forms. It's it comes in the form of physical abuse. It comes in the form of emotional abuse, verbal abuse, immigration abuse, sexual abuse, there's financial
Financial.
abuse, religious abuse. There's so many forms of abuse, and all of these abuse is domestic violence. So as we look and we try to figure out what is going on, people come to us, they question, well, how do we know if somebody is a victim? How do we know somebody is an abuser? Okay, so can we
Red
at
flags.
least, yes, so can we educate ourselves on the red flags we should be looking for victims, abusers, and kids of domestic violence?
As a
Okay, that is,
community, right?
yes, the whole community. Okay, so there are different aspects. So what red flags can the victim herself, himself, what can they be looking for, right? How do you know that your actual spouse is abusing you? Because a lot of us are in denial about abuse, right? So if you feel that your spouse is continuously embarrassing you, putting you down in front of people, making you feel scared, controlling where you go, who you talk to, what you do, keep discouraging you from I don't want you to have a relationship with your family, I don't want you to go out with
Isolating.
friends, preventing you from making your own decisions when you know your decisions are correct, telling you that you're a bad parent, threatening to harm you, threatening to harm your kids, just, and there's so many red flags that we need to educate ourselves on. So we, like when we teach our children, we teach them, when you get married, here are some red flags to keep note of, right? In premarital training, we talk about these red flags. It's so important. And then some things that the victims themselves find themselves doing, right? So victims, when you catch yourself saying sorry for no reason, I'm sorry for what? You don't even know what you're saying sorry for. You find yourself walking on eggshells all the time. If you say one little word can trigger the perpetrator, right? Like, and you don't even know what you did to make them angry or, whatever. These are all signs of domestic violence. It's happening. And I'm going to tell you something. When I finish telling you the list of red flags, I want to talk to you about the most important part of domestic violence. So what can friends and family members look for, both in victims and their children? Okay.
And we have to also say, we also have to make sure that people understand we're not just talking about women. Men can be abused as well.
No, these are victims are across the board. But I mean, let's be real. 85% of the victims are women. Okay, 15% are men. So when we're talking about both of them, but the majority of people that are killed, that are murdered, that are beaten, that are in the hospital are women. Okay, so what can friends and family members look for? First of all, if you see somebody is being isolated, I can literally guarantee you there's domestic violence. Social withdrawal. People who are being abused at home, the last thing they want to do is go out and party, go out and have dinners. They don't want to do that. They want to stay home because now they're depressed. They're feeling all sorts of feelings. Let family and friends become so minimal in your life, right? There's less interaction. There's, I don't want to go to this event. I'll just stay home. Another thing, they're always with their perpetrator, whether it's the kids or the mom. Anytime you see them, they're with their perpetrator. You never see them alone, very rarely. Change in their behavior, change in the way they dress. They're extra quiet. They go to, like, if they have to go out to a gathering, where do they sit? They're sitting by themselves, or they're sitting in a corner where people are not going to come and interact with them a lot. Okay. Also, when you see a victim who's always saying, I think it's me. She's always critical of herself. It's me. Look at the way I look at the way I dress, look at the way. This is something to take very seriously, okay? Because it could be that her self-esteem, everything has been ripped away from her already. And a very important thing, when your friends are constantly canceling plans last minute, that is something you need to reach out and ask them, what's going on? Are you okay? What is happening? This is very, very important. And as a community, we need to have the knowledge, the education, the know-how, how to tactfully speak to both the victim and both the perpetrator. And this is what we're lacking everywhere, not only here, everywhere we're lacking the know-how. How do you build trust with a perpetrator? How do you build a relationship that you can talk to the perpetrator and say, hey, you know, brother, this is not okay. What is going on? Tell me, I can help you. Let's work through this together. Let's build your
That's the
relationship.
missing part.
So there's so much missing that we as a community have to take a lot of responsibility to build this up, to, you know, protect and work with these families that are suffering. Okay, so important thing I want to tell you is that the brothers in our community, they do not think that women know anything, right? We know that. That's why there's abuse. They think women are second class. They don't know as much as we do. We have everything the way it should be. We are just everything, okay? Women are second class. So a lot of the men in our community do not like to deal with the women. So if you look around in Houston, the only organization, again, is An-Nisa Hope Center, and we are all women, case working, counseling, that's it. So now what do we need? We definitely need to get brothers involved, because brothers will listen to brothers, okay? So I'm going to talk a little bit next. Sadaf, is it okay if I talk about case management a minute?
Yes, sure, absolutely, please.
Okay.
What does it entail?
So I want to spend just a few minutes to talk to you about what a case looks like when a victim comes to An-Nisa Hope Center, okay? And I don't want you to think it's different at An-Nisa. It's across the board for all organizations, Muslim and non-Muslim organizations, okay? So when a victim comes to us, they call the helpline or somebody refers them or whatever, we do a complete intake to understand what the situation is, to understand what are they facing at home. Have they left home already? What is going on? So we do a complete intake, which sometimes take about 2 hours, could even be longer if there's a language barrier, okay? Then An-Nisa provides a case plan. We drop a case plan with our client saying, okay, you're asking for A, B, C, and D. And they say, yes. Then we make that case plan. That is the case plan we use to work their entire case. But guess what happens? Somewhere along in the middle, if we need to make changes because something has changed in the relationship, they have left home, you know, the violence is escalated, or there was no violence, and then suddenly now there's like threats going on. So what happens? We reevaluate the case plan and we may add stuff in there and change it around. Some services that we provide that's in the case plan is definitely housing, job placement, legal referrals, financial assistance, and basic
Coaching.
needs, right?
Career coaching.
Yeah, so a part of the whole plan, educating, giving them employment, anything that can make this victim self-sufficient and stable for herself and for her children, okay? Because now you have to remember, people look at domestic violence as too individual, but we need to stop doing that. It's the kids that suffer the most in these relationships, all across the board. A lot of the kids that you see today who are suffering through all of these, you know, things that are going on in their life, mental illness, suicidal thoughts, all of this is from domestic violence. We have to stop hiding it and saying, oh, it's not that. Oh, you know, An-Nisa is just saying it's this big. It's not. Domestic violence in our community is the same as everybody else. 1 out of 2 women that are murdered in the United States is because of domestic violence, okay? So no more nonsense about it's not a big problem. 50% of the people in our community is facing some sort of domestic violence. So
the Muslim community is not immune to this at all. In fact, they're very much a part of those statistics.
We may be even higher in statistics, honestly, if you know, because from the amount of the cases we see that there is a large increase in domestic violence, right? So again, I really want us to focus now. So the next few months, An-Nisa will be concentrating on coming up with all of these classes and training and everything. But guess who we're going to be focusing on? We're going to be focusing on the brothers now. We're going to hold you responsible because we have done it for 13 years. And guess what? Never, ever in 13 years has a group of anybody, women, brothers, come forward and said, Sister Bibi, we would like to help. We would like to be the advocate for domestic violence. We will help you. Doesn't happen. So now, guess what? I'm going to hold this community accountable. An-Nisa Hope Center is going to hold all of you accountable. And alhamdulillah, I put out a form yesterday. We have about 25 brothers that already signed up to make this happen. Inshallah, you will see the difference. I promise you, within a year of us working together, with the brothers being active, with the
that will make the whole difference. Because if the abuser, if the brother is not taught, if the brother is not taken care of, if the brother is not worked with, how is this ever going to end?
And another thing that what I want us to think about is that even if these people get divorced, a couple gets divorced, this brother, this wife, whoever is the perpetrator, lives in your life on forever. Okay, you may think it's still, your kids are little, whatever. No, because guess what? When your child is graduating, you're going to meet them again. When your child is getting married, you're going to be at the wedding with them.
It's not practical to say that you can flee and be in a safe program and be. It's so difficult. That's just like 10%.
Very difficult. And I'm sorry. I am very sorry to tell all of you something. There is, when somebody is thinking of harming another person and they do not fear, nor do they care about themselves, you and me and the entire army of the United States cannot protect them if they're out to get them. I want you to really focus on this because, we, even us at An-Nisa, we try to be very passive. We don't want to ruffle the brothers' feathers. Oh, they think we're all, talking about violence. No, now is the time to step up to the base. Okay, we have to do this right now. So I'm going to hand it over to you back, Sadaf, and then inshallah, if you have any concerns or questions, we are here to answer them, inshallah.
Thank you so much for that, Bibi. Everything you said was 100% correct, and I hope that we are able to, inshallah, really be successful in this. Dr. Hamdan, I'd like to ask you, what are the mental health implications to the clients of domestic violence? What does trauma look like? Can you please elaborate about that? Because another main important component besides domestic violence is mental health. That is really, really important that we work on. So please.
Okay, so that was a loaded question because there's a lot of layers to that. What is trauma? What is the issue is that there's so many factors. One is that most people that are in a domestic violence situation are generally unhealthy to begin with. Okay, so they already, even if they, most likely they were already had some insecurities, some self-esteem issues. Now they get into an unhealthy relationship, it compounds it. So it's very complex and there's multiple layers. But one of the things that I've seen at An-Nisa is that when these clients are coming into us, and I'm actually going to share my screen because I feel, there's nothing like a real example. Let me see, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So in this scenario, Maria is a 29-year-old woman. She's coming to us, but she most often appears disconnected and disinterested in anything we tell her to do. She fidgets, she's avoiding eye contact. She's mumbling when she's asking her questions, and she doesn't really appear to care about anything. She's come to us because she needs help. She's in a situation and we're trying to get her that help. But in a way, she's not doing anything that resembles somebody that wants to get help. And this can be often misleading when you're dealing with her because you're kind of confused. So, for a second, if you look at the outside looking in, this is someone, it's becoming frustrating because, we even help her get a job. And then the employer that we get her a job with seems like this person really doesn't care and is not very grateful that we were able to get her a job somewhere. So from an outsider kind of looking in, trauma glasses off, is that Maria looks lazy, not very motivated, and she doesn't want to apply herself. She's wasting their time. And it's not, we start kind of telling ourselves, wait a minute, it's not okay for her to act like this. And the good news is that, part of being a trauma-informed center and having trauma-informed therapists is that we can actually, step back and actually say, well, what's really going on here? There's a lot more than what appears because it's so easy to dismiss, someone that is a victim of domestic abuse and just kind of sometimes a lot of times blame them. And it's a lot of it's because we don't really understand what's really going on. And so putting the trauma glasses on, one of the things that we know from trauma, from all the neuroscience, is that she's focused on survival. And one of the key things to do is actually make her conscious of how her nervous system is actually working. Because even if she wanted to be a superstar, her trauma, be it from the abuse in her own history, is actually keeping her stuck. So she's in freeze mode most of the time. Okay, that's from now a practitioner looking at Maria. Now, in addition to that, Maria's inner truth, because of all of this, is that she's come to us because she wants to feel safe and she wants somebody to help her. But her history of being in an unsafe relationship is no one cares about me. Imagine living with someone for 15 years and constantly being in a state of fear that this person doesn't care about me, this person doesn't protect me. The most important person, my partner, who's supposed to be my safe haven, has now become the most dangerous person that I fear on this earth. Okay, so we underestimate what the person is actually going through and actually what it requires for the people that are actually helping her. And that's why, it's very easy to give lip service of what needs to be done for this person and what needs, but there's so many things that are complicated. We're always looking at the person that's abusing them and blaming them, and that we're not also even understanding the person that's being abused. And this part for us has been transformative in terms of helping us even understand them and making sure to give them the attention and the care that they need. But it requires effort on both ends, right? From a psychoanalysis on our end, but also, the client stepping up and working with us so they can actually heal. And then in addition to that, manage the abusive partner that could keep contaminating and adding the complexity to this trauma. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And,
it has been transformative. Like trauma glasses on, trauma glasses off is what we've learned from you. It's been transformative.
So yeah, and so this is one of the things too that even like one of the things in Charlotte going forward is we want to work to kind of, whether it's Fort Bend Women's Center, working with the officials, working with the court systems to get them to also understand this developmental trauma. I mean, this is some the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistic Manual, which is what all psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists use to diagnose people. It only classifies PTSD. And that is assuming one trauma. Most people that we're dealing with, and majority of people in our community, have complex trauma. And that influences so many things. And so we reduce it to, oh, she's crazy. Oh, he's delusional. And so that we kind of throw away these stigmas, but it doesn't do anything to actually understand and address, to figure out, okay, if this person doesn't trust you, this is what needs to happen. We need to actually, first and foremost, let them know what's happening to their nervous system. Second of all, build this trust. Because if they don't trust you, they're not going to feel safe. And so no matter what you do, you can throw money at the problem all you want. It still won't make a difference. You can get them the best legal help in the world. It still won't make a difference. Okay. So that's in terms of like just trying to give you an example of what we're working with somebody coming through our doors asking for help. What the legwork that we have to do to make sure that we're getting them in, building a relationship with them, teaching them about themselves. The biggest change about trauma-informed care is that it's not about them having a relationship with us. It's about teaching them how to have a relationship with themselves so they can feel safe within their body. Okay. Now, the other thing is too that I wanted to touch on was, red flags that you are in an abusive relationship, because one of the things is that we start noticing is that people start, acting very different. And Bibi talked about a lot of these signs as well, but it's, your friend starts changing plans, they start, canceling things. But then the other thing is too, you start feeling afraid to break up with them because, you feel like, some of the things I've heard clients tell me, they're like, well, I might as well just stay because if I leave, I still have to deal with them. So they're like, what's the point? You feel tied down. And the other thing is too, like, you have to check in. You're afraid to make decisions because you don't want to bring up certain subjects because that's just going to trigger them. You resent them. And the other thing is too, you start becoming emotionally distant or numb. And what that does though, is actually when you turn off the negative emotions, you turn off also the good emotions. So you're not feeling the negative stuff, but you're also not feeling alive. You're just blah. You're kind of going through life in the emotions. You find yourself not trusting your thoughts or your instincts. You're really unmotivated and your life just becomes survival. I mean, I can't, the biggest thing I see about all trauma things is that if trauma had a gun and being in an abusive relationship is a form of trauma, The red flag is you're unmotivated and you're just living day to day. Okay, I mean, it's you lack action. And when you lack action, you're not living. You're just going through the motions, doing whatever you can, bare minimum. And, you know, unfortunately, this is more common. You know, one of the reasons why I don't like the word domestic abuse, because immediately 90% of people shut themselves off and say, oh, that's not me. The better, you know, the word I like is red flags in a relationship, because that applies to all of us. And there is an element, and I think the other thing is too that we have to recognize is that majority of our relationships in our community have some element of abuse. And I think one of the things that we also need to get talking about is that abuse is a spectrum. We just assume that it's just this extreme form, but abuse is a spectrum. And within that spectrum, there are things that need to be done. It's not like wait till it gets to the end of where it becomes unbearable and the guy's beating you and you're in the hospital bed. It shouldn't even get to that point. You know, emotional abuse is even more damaging than the actual physical abuse. I always think about in Islam why they always talk about the significance of the tongue, because the tongue is what creates that verbal abuse. So, you know, I feel like there's so much in our own deen that talks about the importance of being kind and about the eloquence of speech and about the lack of a verbal abuse, because that verbal abuse is quite damaging. And the last thing that I want to talk about is red flags in your relationship that Bibi and both Sadaf have already talked about, but is that, you know, once again, they have unrealistic expectations for you to be this perfect person. They're jealous of your relationships. What you'll see them is that they'll reduce it to, well, I just don't want you to talk to anyone on the phone when I'm home, you know, so then now you're restricted. They start blaming you for their problems. You know, it's everyone else's fault, you know, and then language, right? You make me angry as opposed to taking responsibility for their emotions. It's, you know, their emotions are your fault. They're easily insulted. You don't know what's going to set them off. And, you know, and the mood swings, they go from Romeo to like Jekyll and Hyde, right? To the most evil person. And it's constant, and it's this constant, you know, then there's this whole cycle of like, they reel you in, they love bomb you, they treat you great, and then get you in a comfortable space. And then before you know it, the attacks start. And then, you know, then you withdraw, become cold and distant, and then it's a cycle. And they reel you back in, you know, get you back in, get you in a comfortable space, love bomb you, adore you. So there's so many layers to this that we as a community have to do a better job talking about, because whether you're on the extreme version or in somewhere in the middle, things can be done. Whether it's you as the person that's in a relationship who's being abused, you can put boundaries, you can try to do certain things to mitigate it so it doesn't escalate. And one of the other things that I hear is that people don't want to step up because they feel like they have to end your relationship. And that's actually a myth. You can actually step up to get help, so you don't have to end your relationship. Now, that does require both parties willing to work on themselves and actually recognize how they're contributing to the chaos. And I have worked with some couples to do that. It does take work, but I've seen the ones that have worked is because both of them recognize how they're contributing to it. And both of them want to save their marriage, and both of them want to save their relationship. And yes, it might not be the best of the relationship, and it might have elements of abuse, but it's about each one taking responsibility for their trauma that has contributed to them acting in an unhealthy way. Nobody gets married and says, oh, I want to abuse my partner. You know, nobody gets married and says, oh, I want to be unhappy. But we need to actually take a little bit more responsibility for, okay, if I am doing ugly things in my relationship, what's going on inside of me? What is contributing to this? That goes against my fitrah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't create me this way. So
and that's why red flags are important, right?
Yes.
Like if you see those red flags early on, then at An-Nisa Hope Center, we do offer that. We do, if the client wants, we do reach out to the husband.
Mm-hmm.
We do try to work with the husband if that's something that the client wants to do. And alhamdulillah, we've had a lot of very successful marriages getting back together.
So Dr. Hamdan, can I just say one thing? What you're saying is 100% true. The thing is, this is that the earlier you come and look for help, the better your relationship can be rebuilt, okay? A lot of people just wait until it's escalated to hate. Once it gets to hate, it's very hard to fix it.
And Bibi, you're so right, because, you know, I have some, and I love working with the newlyweds because they're so fresh and, you know, they still love each other, and the damage is minimal. It's I call it a bank account, right? They're not in the deficit, right? Because the more negative you have, the more it's debt. you're taking money out of the bank. And the more good things you have more. So when you're fresh, it's still, they've been married a year, they're really working on it. Even if they're critical or they say some mean things or they're ugly things, there's enough positive stuff in the bank to keep the relationship working. And on this point number 4 here, where it says you resent your partner, once that, to exactly what you're saying, Bibi, the longer you've been married, we've had couples come in at 15 years and try to work on it. That resentment has been built in. It's been marinating. It's yucky. It's like that something, that coffee that's been sitting there for a week and hasn't been washed out. It starts collecting mold and it becomes a lot more difficult. It's still possible, but it's just a lot harder. Right. So yes, the sooner, the average couple comes into therapy at the 6-year mark. That's what the research shows. And yes, it's still more challenging at 6 years. If you can get in at the 2-year mark, I say everybody at the first year, learn the tools early on to mitigate this stuff, but the sooner the better, to your point.
Okay, and one other important point I want to make, and I think, and jump in, please. A woman will take the abuse when she's alone. But the minute you start abusing her children, she goes into trauma like nobody's business, okay? And that is the time when, I hear people say, oh, the woman, they should not leave, they should stay, you're taking their kids away. Can I just tell you, when a woman is seeing her children being abused, she does not care about herself anymore. Her children are much more important than her own life. And I think we all have to say, this is reality. No woman wakes up in the morning and say, guess what? I'm going to leave this great marriage with my great husband and a great home. Oh, just because I can? Nobody does that. So before you open, our community has a weird way of saying the things that are total not facts at all. Okay. And we need to think before we speak. Educate yourself before you comment. If you do not know about domestic violence, you do not know about mental health, do me a favor and just keep your mouth closed. You're causing more harm than good. Okay? All right. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, both Dr. Hamdan and Bibi. That was very enlightening, because not only do we need to be aware as a community of what domestic violence is, but we need to find ways of how to prevent it. And this is a very, very important item, the red flags, because the red flags are what warn you. And if you see those warnings, whether it's with the woman or the man in the relationship, or whether it's amongst themselves in that relationship, if you see a red flags as a community person, as a friend, something's happening to your friend, reach out to them, tell them to get help. If you see a red flag in your relationship, reach out to us, reach out to other agencies or other mental health professionals who can help you, both of you. And that's why the brothers group is going to be so essential, because a lot of times the men do not want to reach out, or because I'm saying men in particular, because they are bad at reaching out. And so if there's a brother support group that have been trained, that can see and identify these red flags, because education is what we're going to do with these brothers, right? So if they're out in the communities and they can see and identify those red flags, they can see that, oh, this brother is behaving this way. Or if a couple comes to an imam, we need to train the imams as well to be able to say, okay, brother, you need help. This is what you need to do. This is where you need to go. And then they can reach out to us and they can reach out to professionals. And that will make the whole difference in creating healthier families for our children to come, healthier base for our children to come, inshallah. So we're really, this is a new phase and a whole new agenda that we have, that we really, really want to make sure that we empower, educate, and legislate. Legislate is another very important point, because it's very essential to have the laws in place that protect our victims as well. So inshallah, with that, I'd like to say Allah Hafiz to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Bibi and Dr. Hamdan, for very enlightening information.
Thank you,
and
Sadaf. Jazakallah khair.
until next time.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.